Hey, what's up, City Point fam? My name is Rick Skadden. I'm a pastor over here at City Point, Northern Colorado, and this is my story. I remember when I was 13, my dad went to prison yet once again, and nothing seemed to be any different this time, except for one thing. While he was in prison, man, my dad met Jesus. Through his letters, his love, and his transformation, I saw how amazing a life with Jesus could be, and at 15, I was radically saved. And it was one of those radical transformations, man, where I stopped drinking, I stopped doing drugs, I stopped hanging out with my friends and started going to church and attending youth group every week. I wish I could say that from that moment I lived for Jesus, but I didn't. I wish I had listened to his voice and obey his word, but I slid back into my old habits and in some ways was worse than before. And by now I was selling drugs and I was using drugs and which meant I had never gone a day without. And around the same time, man, I asked my girlfriend to marry me. My life was just a constant roundabout of running, hiding, and lying. My life with my fiance was full of broken promises to change. And I could barely keep it all together. And then in a moment, everything fell apart completely. You see, our wedding was planned for July 10th, and 6 days before, we went on a 4th of July party to celebrate the holiday. And naturally, I partied hard, man. I drank myself into a blur. I took whatever drugs were on the table. By the time I ended up confronting my fiance and my best man over their behavior that night, they were just acting really strange. They admitted to an ongoing affair that they had been having. And you can imagine, in a moment, I was beyond any sense of reason or self-control. I made the dumb mistake of getting behind the wheel and jumped in my truck and sped out of the cul-de-sac, and I ran 4 red lights before I ran a 5th one and T-boned somebody. I T-boned him so hard that it basically shred his truck in half, and my truck spun around, hit the curb, enough force to break off my back tire, and opened my door, stumbled out to the curb, and kind of passed out on the curb. Woke up in the hospital, handcuffed to the bed, and the cops were asking me about the contents of my vehicle. I knew I was headed towards an arrest, and my truck contained every gun I owned. Boxes of shells, alcohol, drugs, and an assortment of my drug dealing equipment. And I was going down. It was about a month later into fighting this case. I remember the phone call to this day, and it was one of those phone calls that change your life forever. And it was my lawyer on the other end, and he said, "Rick, I have some bad news for you." And I said, what could be worse than what I'm facing right now? And he said, well, the charge of vehicular assault on the other driver, they're dropping that charge and we're changing it to vehicular homicide. The other driver died. I just felt this hit in my stomach, and it was one of those feelings I'll never forget. The thought that I could literally take an innocent man's life crushed me, man. It crushed me to death. And, eventually got picked up and went to jail and was going through my case and all these other things. And I remember sitting in a church service in jail, just so lost and broken, man. I was so alone. And I remember God speaking to me once again. He said, "Rick, are you done? Are you done running? Are you done running this time?" And I looked up and I said, "Yeah, Lord, I'm done. I'm done running. I can't do this on my own." And in that moment, man, I rededicated my life back to Christ, and went through all my court dates and all those other things, and God had mercy on me that day, and they ran my sentence concurrently. And so I only had to do 12 years, and I just remember the weight just lifted off of my shoulders that I could finally start this long process of restoration, of restoring my life. And in prison, man, I took every opportunity to do every class that I could, sometimes studying the Bible up to 2 hours a day. I used the time so wisely because I knew that old man had to die in that prison, and that when I got out on the other side, that the new man was going to be out there to just shine and serve Jesus. And I knew that the only way I was ever going to be somebody in this life was through Jesus Christ. And eventually, man, I did a program that, actually took 4 years off of my sentence, which automatically made me eligible for the halfway house, of which I got out in 2010. I got plugged into a church right away. I got out on the ankle bracelet for 18 months and got out on parole for another 3.5 years. I met my beautiful wife there. And just loving life right now. We have 3 beautiful kids. And in January of last year, 2020, I came on full time as a pastor at City Point, Northern Colorado. That the pastor who pulled me out of a crowd when I was a 15-year-old boy, and he prophesied over me that I had a pastoral call on my life. And that pastor's name was Pastor Mark Ramsey, who had come from Australia to start a church in Colorado. This was a pretty amazing considering the path that I was once on. And I'm so grateful that Pastor Mark Ramsey played his part in my story by speaking a future over me. And I get excited when I think of what other cities will be blessed through Faith, Love, Hope offering, through launching more locations, and even more excited when I think of the God stories just waiting to be woven through conversations, meetings, and opportunities. And I will always give generously to Faith, Love, Hope because I am a recipient of the generosity of others who gave. And now it's my turn to see what God can do with my financial gift.